Right. Okay. I think we're recording. Welcome to the immunity webinar. I mean, this is Max Living, and we're going through how to create a strong immune system. This is something that the office we chose to specifically do extra because we've had so many people getting sick here recently and complaining about kids and different, stomach bugs and different head colds and flus, and obviously the coronavirus is going a little bit crazy a little bit right now too. So we specifically wanted to help you guys focus on how to create just bulletproof immune system. So we're going to go through some awesome stuff this morning. I'm really excited. In fact, I really believe if we could just focus on this and really focus on building and strengthening our immune system, so many other things when it comes to sickness and disease and you name it, would drastically be different. And so if you were going to dive into just one thing, especially this season, as we're going into the fall, make sure you are implementing the stuff that we're going to be talking about. So we're going to jump right into it though. All right. Get my computer all set up here. There we go. So guys, why is it that we do these events, do these webinars? Why do we do this stuff? Well, it's because we want to empower people to live longer, healthier lives through the power of chiropractic care and the integration of the 5 essentials. I mean, that is our purpose. We are here to help people get better, feel better, be healthier. And so that's one of the reasons why we do all these events. We used to do a lot of like live seminars, and I absolutely love doing those way more. But right now, webinars are just an easy way to, get to people and to go back and to rewatch it and all that sort of stuff. So, but that's the purpose. We want to help you guys just live longer, healthier, and more fulfilling lives. So a little bit about us. That is me. My name is Dr. Brent DeLong and my wife, Dr. Jill DeLong. We have a practice here in Norman, Oklahoma, and we've been doing this for, oh my gosh, just over a decade. And we want to share with you all the things that we've been learning and been studying and what we do with our family and share that with you guys. So that way you guys can do this stuff with your family and create just an awesome, healthy Max Living family. In fact, you can see my little girl right there getting her adjustments, love my chiropractor t-shirt right there. Of course she loves it. It's her dad. But, we do the research, we study this stuff. This is our passion. We love to learn, and we want to be able to share this with you because we know that everybody has the time and availability or the desire to do all the research and to find out, what it's going to take to just create a healthy family. And so that's what we're here for. But where are we now? I mean, guys, a little wake up, a little bit of a wake up call here, but where are we? Who are we listening to? What's going on? What are the statistics? It's really kind of scary to think about what's happened even in just this last couple of years on the perception and the polarity of what is going on. And there's never been a time in history where looking at ourselves and our health and the health of our family has ever been more important. The problem, in at least what I see, is they're so far extreme. And when I say they, I mean like mainstream influence on fear and not enough empowerment. And so that's what I want to do. I want to empower you because you want to look at like, who are you listening to? Who are you getting influenced by? Where are your belief systems getting formed from? Because if if your beliefs and you're solely listening to and not questioning the mainstream media or the mainstream or the CDC or the World Health Organization or big pharma, if you're not questioning that stuff, man, I've got to ask you, you have to pause and reflect. Here's just an article that they did. And there was like 11, let me see, there was a specific number. In 2016, a group of more than a dozen senior scientists at the CDC lodged an ethical complaint alleging that the CDC was being influenced by corporate and political interests and the ways that would shortchange taxpayers. And they noted that pervasive nature of the unethical practices throughout all levels of the CDC. There's just bias. There's so many instances out there that show that some of these major companies that influence in our health directives are, and put it in they're corrupt. They are. There's been so many CDC whistleblowers. Obviously, just like in this article, a dozen senior scientists talking about how unethical some of the stuff that they're doing and the outside influences on politics or whatever. So guys, you got to just question. That's all I'm saying, is you just got to question it. I'm not saying you have to go out and do all the research. But find people that you do trust and see what they have to say, and then listen to everything, and then use just your common sense to decipher, hey, this is making sense. This is what I'd like to do. But please just do not follow blindly when it comes to these sort of people and these sort of recommendations, because, I really do question sometimes whether they have our health as their primary, motive or whatever. So, but look at what's going on. You just want to look at the statistics. Are we winning? Look at the scoreboard. That's how you tell. One of the highest infant mortality rates out of all the industrialized nations. That's crazy. When I first heard that stat, it blew my mind, because you think about the United States being this amazing, world power, and we are, but is that producing the best and healthiest culture? Well, absolutely not. We're one of the sickest countries in the entire industrialized nation. So again, stats, one of the highest infant mortality rates out of all the industrialized worlds. That means that having a baby here in the US is one of the most dangerous things as far as them being able to live and survive than most other industrialized countries. Almost half of all children have at least one chronic disease. Pediatric cancer is the leading cause of death outside of accidents. 1 out of 7 children are antipsychotic medication. 1 out of 6 have a learning disability. 1 out of 12 suffer with asthma. 1 out of 5 diagnosed with emotional, mental, or behavioral disorders. 1 out of 5 are obese. 1 out of 13 have chronic allergies. And 1 out of 59, in some cases, 1 out of 34 have autism. And those numbers have skyrocketed over the last 3 decades. 30, 40, 50 years ago, this was not the case. So what's going on? What's changed? Why is it so bad? Well, it's because we have flawed philosophies, in my opinion. We have the wrong paradigm. And one of the things that I dislike the most about what's going on in our current system, when you see in the news, and obviously this last year and a half has just been exponentially really highlighting some of the craziness that's going on, but they are just creating and creating and creating more fear. How much fear have they created in us that we can't talk to our neighbor, we can't visit our family, we can't go to the hospital and be with our loved ones as they're taking their last breaths? Look at the idea that they're putting all these masks on kids. They're just creating so much fear of the germ that it's causing massive damage. In fact, if you really look at what fear does to your immune system, biopsychology, scientific studies of the brain, neurotransmitters, other aspects of the human biology that influence human behavior, thoughts, and feelings, the more fear you have, the weaker your immune system. In fact, the statistic is something crazy. Even just a couple minutes of stress can lower your immune system for hours on end. So is living in fear good? No, we should have some healthy fears. Don't get me wrong. But the constant living in fear that there's this secret, hidden, invisible, lurking danger out there around every turn that you can't go out and do stuff is just, it in my opinion, is devastating to the biophysiology. Again, it just decreases the immune system. Yeah, this is kind of new research, and the more and more they study, the more and more they're starting to understand how our emotions and the mindset can influence and impact our immune system. So, there's a different paradigm that we've really got to walk through. And this is something that me and my family have been living and really implementing And I ultimately think like there was one thing that we could do to impact you, impact our patients, impact our community, it would be to shift the paradigm. It's shifting the way that we think about health. And here's the reality is right now, there's really only one major paradigm that exists. And it's what really has been the foundation of the medical philosophy and the medical system. And it's all about the germ theory. The germ theory of disease. So 1860, Louis Pasteur did a 4-year study, and they found that specific germs cause specific diseases. And the idea of that was, okay, germs cause disease. There's these little things that are out there, and that, they come in contact with you, and then boom, you get sick, like you get disease. And that's what the entire medical system is really based on. And you know that because their entire philosophy is about trying to combat or fight the germ, right? When it comes to COVID, it's all about fighting COVID. It's about eliminating COVID. It's about eliminating the germs. I mean, that's why you like have all these antibacterial soaps, and you have like, you got to wipe down your entire house on, with bleach, and you got to do all this stuff because you're trying to fight the germ. Well, Dr. B.J. Palmer, in the early 1900s, he had this pretty interesting quote. And I want you to really think about this for a second. But it was, if the germ theory were true, then we'd all be dead. If the germ theory were true, there'd be no one around or alive to talk about it. If germs caused us to get sick, we're constantly bombarded by germs. We have more bacteria. We're like 10 to 1 more bacterial cells than human DNA cells. We're like 100 to 1 viral cells to human DNA cells. So right now, you sitting there listening to this right now, you have more bacteria, foreign viruses in and on you at all times than you have DNA, like human DNA cells. We're constantly bombarded. I mean, you cannot breathe air without there being, different things in the air, or touch things or eat things or whatever. You can't live in this world without being exposed to these germs, but our bodies don't always get sick. So there's some flaw to this theory. And here's another example. Kid comes home, or they have a note that says, hey, there's 3 people in class today that came down with the flu. Well, obviously they were at the school yesterday and they were exposed, and your kid or my kid was all exposed to these different viruses, the flu, and not all of them got sick though. And let's say they come home, and let's say you do have someone sick in the family. Doesn't mean everyone gets sick in the family. I mean, I can't tell you how many times someone's like, oh, so-and-so got COVID, but out of the 4 family members, only 2 of them did. But obviously they're all exposed. I don't care how much you try to quarantine. You can't, it doesn't work like that, or if you're wearing masks, this is not a mask bash, but it says there right on the box that those masks do not stop viral particles. It says it on the manufacturer. They do not stop viral particles. It's like throwing sand at like a link chain fence. It doesn't stop them. We're always exposed. So there's some holes in this theory. And so at the same time, there was another person that had an idea that was called the terrain theory. And it took into a lot more than just a specific germ causing a specific disease. And what the idea was that it was more about the resistance of the host. It was more about the terrain of the person that allowed someone to get sick from a germ. So these are the things that it really took into consideration if someone was going to get sick. Number one is it took into consideration how much of the virus or bacteria you were exposed to. So it wasn't just that there was a germ, but how much, what was the viral load? It took into account how strong the virus impacted your immune system, and overall the strength of that person's immune system. So how healthy was that person? So, we think about the terrain, and here's just a kind of a silly example, but like the fish bowl is gross and super toxic. Clearly that fish is going to get sick. Now, it's the amount of the virus, not just the fact that there is a germ, right? You put that fish into a clean bowl. Well, now the terrain is different. So there we go. Now, when it specifically talking about sickness and disease, whether it's, and we'll just use COVID as an example because it's been a huge highlight in what's going on. But people, so they're changing their terminology even from dying from COVID with dying with COVID, like COVID related death. And what they found is that like 99.998% of people that passed away with COVID had 2.6 comorbidities. I mean, they were already super sick and super weak. You know, an interesting stat is the average death rate, or the average death, like how old someone is that dies in the US, is 72. The average person that died with COVID was like 78. So the average death from COVID was higher than the average like death of a regular person. But they found that there were so many more comorbidities. And I'm not saying that like, because I know people that have passed away. I do. And I get that there are some instances where it seemed like someone was healthy and they passed away. I'm not trying to minimize that. Like, don't take that the wrong way. But the reality is we want to focus on the greater portion of this. And it's that it was weak, sick people that got hurt more. Obesity, heart conditions, diabetes, depleted immunity, high blood pressure. So stuff like this, which, you know, we all know 99% of all these are lifestyle induced. So they mandate masks. Well, why wouldn't they mandate like healthy lifestyle? To me, it seems like that's the paradigm shift. Instead of focusing on the germ, why wouldn't we focus on getting so healthy that we can interact with our environment, right? We strengthen the terrain. So because we know so many instances where people got positive tests and they didn't even know they had it. Like imagine that. Imagine that. Imagine that there's a pandemic and it's so bad that you have to have a test to even know that you have it. So that's where we're going to shift our entire focus. And we can do things to minimize exposures and things. And I'm not saying that we don't necessarily need to neglect that 100%. What I'm saying is that healthy people survive the flu. Healthy people survive COVID. Healthy people survive head colds. Healthy people don't have near a bad effect from these sort of elements. So let's focus on really how to strengthen the host. And again, when it comes to like all this like misinformation and hidden information, you know, we have to have a firm foundation and principles by which we make our health and healthcare decisions. At the end of the day, it comes down to our understanding and our philosophy. And so here's just a really good example. Lake Erie, when was this? Back a while ago, back in the 60s. And obviously Lake Erie is beautiful. If you've ever been to the Great Lakes, I mean, it's just a beautiful, beautiful area. But once upon a time back in the 60s, they were dumping all these toxic chemicals into the water with all these, all the industry plants along the shores, and chemicals and toxins and pollutants and pesticides and heavy metals were dumped into Lake Erie. And they came from hundreds of factories discharging thousands of pipelines along the shore. Even in the smallest concentrations of toxins that were distributed out via the lake, the Great Lakes, were capable of causing cancer, birth defects, damage, nervous system, and immune system issues. Back in the 1960s, the term Lake Erie is dead started to appear in national publications. And this is crazy. The lake was so toxic that all these fish were just super sick. They were getting really weird tumors, abnormal growths. Their offspring were really small and had all sorts of birth deformities. And you'd have all these dead fish just wash up on the shore because it was just such a toxic environment. And then the fish were getting ate by the birds, and the birds were starting to get sick, and it was actually affecting their offspring because when they would lay eggs, their eggs were really brittle. All the offspring were born, again, super sick, birth deformities, and it affected the entire ecosystem. Now, there was a huge movement trying to help the fish, but think about this. How crazy would it be if some biologists were to go in and try to set up all these like fish hospitals, and they're trying to give all these fish like special medications, and they're trying to cut off the tumors, or they're trying to give them chemo drugs to fight the, cancer loads. And they were doing all these treatments to the fish. or they're trying to go in there and put chemicals into the water to counteract it, or if they were giving them in vaccines to change their DNA, like if they had a cancer vaccine, like imagine like how crazy that would be. Like it wouldn't make any sense. Like the only way someone would ever want to promote that is if they had some sort of financial benefit from these pharmaceutical companies or these, fish hospitals that were going to get set up. Otherwise, it just sounds ridiculous that you would even do that. And no one thought about that. No one thought about that. So what was the solution? Well, they stopped putting toxins into the water. There's this huge movement where all these, cities and stuff like that came together to try to change how they were distributing their toxins and create all these different special pipelines so that Lake Erie wasn't getting consistently dumped into. And then what did they do? Well, yeah, there were some cleanup efforts for sure, but they just let nature run its course. And actually the lake, as we removed the interference, as we removed the toxics being dumped in, the lake was able to rebuild itself and become a beautiful, healthy lake again. All because they were able to stop dumping the toxins in. So just by eliminating the toxic onslaught, the lake was able to regenerate. But in that same way, we're designed to be active and move. And in order to maintain proper function equilibrium, it basically comes down to these 5 essentials. And so now we're going to kind of get into some solution stuff. But ultimately, what MaxLiving has created is a healthcare delivery system. It's a way of life. And we put every single health category basically under the sun into and broken them down into these specific 5 essentials. And if we can just implement these 5 essentials, the body has the ability to regenerate and has the body's ability to heal. Because what do we believe? What do I believe? I believe that the body is self-healing and self-regulating. It is created to heal. I have 100% faith that if I cut my arm, that cut will heal. 100% faith that cut will heal. I have 100% faith that my little girl, her body is constantly building and repairing and building and repairing. I mean, if you've had kids, you watch how fast they grow. How crazy cool is that? That their body is constantly building and evolving. You think about how amazing it is that a mom can build a baby in her womb. And really the main job is for the mom to try to get out of the way, let the body do its thing, let the body build. We just need to stop interfering with it, right? So we avoid things that could interfere with it and let the body do its thing. So we believe at MaxLiving that the body is self-healing and self-regulating. The body is designed intelligently and it's able to adapt to an environment. The power that made the body is what heals the body and happens no other way. That is important. If you think about how amazing life, the creation of life is, these 2 cells that come together, and over the course of 9 months, it creates a baby. That power, that spark that happened when those 2 cells united to create life, that power is the same power that runs our bodies. That our hearts can beat, our lungs breathe, we digest food, and that food particles turns into our eyeball cells. That power that heals a cut, that power is what animates us. That's what runs, that's what heals us. And ultimately, the body needs no help. It just needs no interference. The body needs no help. It needs no interference. That's what we believe. And as we utilize these 5 essentials and implement these 5 essentials, that is the power that we are trying to work with. We don't do nutrition or do supplements because that's where the healing comes from. The power is already there, but the power needs building blocks. We want to remove bad food and implement good food because bad food can interfere. Same thing with our thought process. We talked about scarcity, stress. That'll interfere with the body's innate potential, a lack of oxygen, too many toxins, not enough function, communication of the body. Like those are the things that interfere with the body's ability to heal. And this is where we live. We live with faith over fear. When this whole pandemic was going on, all this sort of stuff, like we didn't live in a place of fear because I knew that the body was created to interact with viruses. I knew that a healthy, strong immune system was going to be able to interact and to overcome a viral interaction. I knew that. I know that because the body is so strong and so amazing. and understanding like what viruses is and where they come from. Like, again, it's just one thing like we are exposed to, but we have more viral particles in and on and around us than we do human DNA cells. I think if you just grasp that like there's no way you can avoid viruses. They're all around us all the time. That might give you a little bit of confidence and empower you to know like, oh, I'm already exposed to thousands and thousands of viruses all the time. So why would I be scared of just this one? Now it's novel and it's a little bit more contagious, but at the end of the day, it's still just a virus. So understanding when we do get sick, what happens? Because too many people, they look at symptoms, they look at sickness as something bad. And it's not necessarily fun. Like nobody wants to get sick. But here again, you have to understand if you believe that the body is incredibly strong and that the body is intelligent and the body is always healing, then you will have faith that when you have a symptom, it's correct. So like, what am I talking about? Well, how about coughs, fevers, or sniffles? If you are coughing, even though it sucks and it's embarrassing and you're coming in, you're coughing on people or whatever, it's just your body trying to get rid of irritants. It's your body trying to clear. So if your body, if you have viral particles and bacterial particles and you have stuff going on in your lungs and you're coughing and your body's trying to get that stuff out, does it make any sense that you take something to suppress your cough? If the body's doing the right thing at the right time and your body's trying to get rid of that stuff and you take a medication or even a supplement to minimize your cough, doesn't that seem like you're working against your body's innate intelligence? What about a fever though? Isn't a fever good? When your body has the innate intelligence to increase its temperature to a point where it kills off viruses and bacteria as part of an immune response so you can overcome an infection, isn't that good? So why would we take something to lower that? Well, because we've been trained that fevers are bad. The fever is not bad. It's the infection that's bad. So we want the infection, we want our body to heal and to handle that infection. Now, here's a counter argument to this, and this is important. Faith over fear. When my kid gets a fever, and Kinsley's been sick. I mean, her body interacts with the environment and her body has symptoms. Absolutely. We don't necessarily call it sick. We call it being healthy. We call it a healthy response in our house. But when she has a fever, let's say her fever gets like 104, that's happened. She's had 104 fever. I know that her body is reacting and responding correctly. And I have full faith. You know why I have full faith? I have full faith because I know that she's been taking her supplements. I know that she's been eating healthy foods, live, real foods. I know that she hasn't been super toxic, exposed to tons of toxins or a bunch of sugars and crap. I also know that she's been getting in adjustments. I understand that her body is functioning and healing at a very high level. So if she gets sick, I know that her body's going to do the right thing. So her fever is going to go to a correct level, right to a point where it kills off the bacteria or viruses, and then it goes back to normal, breaks the fever. It'll go to a correct level. That's important. It'll go to a correct level. Now, here's the thing: is like, well, if somebody else's kid is eating tons of sugar, full of junk food, doesn't eat any live food, doesn't have any supplementation, isn't getting enough exercise, isn't getting sleep, super stressed out from family life or whatever, and hasn't been getting adjusted, I have no idea if their body is going to be responding correctly or if their fever is going to go to the perfect level and then kill the viruses. I don't know if that's going to react unaccordingly. So yeah, there might be a little bit more fear there. But again, it's not the Tylenol that's going to fix that. It's getting the kid healthy. It's getting them in, getting them adjusted. It's getting them on the right supplementation. It's getting them the correct food. It's getting rid of all the other junk. It's removing the interference so the body's going to, respond correctly. Well, again, so that's what we do when we have fevers. Now, there are things that we might do to make her feel comfortable. If I have a fever, which sucks and you feel terrible, there are things that we might do to like help ourselves maybe feel better, but it's not things that are going to work against the innate intelligence. It's going to work with the innate intelligence. We might do cool washcloths. We might do a detox bath. Obviously we're going to do specific supplements, essential oils, all these different things. We might do saunas. We might do things to help break the fever, but it's working with the body, not against the body. Fundamental philosophy, make that switch in your mind, work with the body's intelligence, not against it. And that'll revolutionize even just how you make health decisions, period. Power that made the body heals the body. We talk about the potential for the body to heal when you remove the interference. I'll just tell you this crazy cool story. I just heard this yesterday. I had a patient come in, and this is an older lady. Not like super old, but I mean, she's older. I think she might be maybe in her late 50s, early 60s, maybe something like that. And her health has been going downhill pretty bad. She's had a lot of issues, vertigo issues and stuff like that. So she's coming in, she's getting adjusted. And by the way, she's driving from like an hour and a half away. So she comes in, she gets adjusted. This is probably like her 6th or 7th adjustment. And she just told me the other day that like all of her tremors are gone. She used to have really, really bad tremors, not to mention her vertigo is greatly improved. But it was one of those things that she's like, I don't understand. Like how has this been affecting my tremors? Like, you're not treating my tremors. We barely talked about my tremors. And it's just that's what happens, when you get adjusted. When you get adjusted and you remove interference in your nerve system's ability to control the body and self-regulate the body heals every single time. And it's funny too, because I hear all these amazing stories constantly. Dr. Jill hears all these cool stories. We talk about this in office too much because we get almost numb and unsurprised when someone has this amazing testimony, like, oh my gosh, all my tremors are gone. All my vertigos are gone. Oh my gosh, Jill had a kind of an interesting story. She had a patient who was really young, I don't know, in her mid 20s or late 20s or something like that, had really bad incontinence, meaning that she literally like couldn't like get up and walk to the kitchen without peeing her pants. And I mean, devastating to a young person. I mean, gosh, I couldn't imagine living like that. And gosh, after just a few adjustments, she's perfectly normal, because they were able to get pressure off the nerve system so her body could work perfectly. So again, the power that made the body heals the body. And now I want to talk about these specific lines of defense, because this is important. Understanding your lines of defense and being able to work with that and strengthen those lines of defense versus working against it. And sometimes you're working against it and you don't even realize that you're doing it. So the initial line of defense is the outside. It is your skin. This is the number one line of defense. And with that is your mucosal, barrier. You got to be very careful with using some of these specific soaps and hand sanitizers. And if you've been in our new building, you've noticed that we actually have hand sanitizers on the wall and that they're empty. I see people go for it all the time. We did not put those up. This is a temporary spot. They were just there, and I can't take them down because it's a temporary spot. However, they're not being refilled because it is stripping your natural bacteria off of your hand. Your number one line of defense on your skin is all the healthy bacteria you have all over your skin. And when you're using that stuff, you're stripping away all the good bacteria. And so you're basically eliminating all of the like first line of defense, all your initial fighters. So then when you do come in contact with a germ or whatever, now there's no barrier defense. And boom, you're like super, susceptible. Same thing with the mucosal stuff. Like, we don't want to take a lot of these antihistamines because it strips out all the initial, layer of defense. So you got to be careful you're not ruining your initial line of defense because you're trying to treat a symptom or because you've been brainwashed to think that the germs are the bad guys and you have to kill all the germs on your hands. The germs are the good guys that are on your hands. You got to protect them. And so even doing specific things that are going to help promote your microbiome, even the external biome, okay? Then you have stuff like the specific lines of defense, which your internal stuff, like your gut lining. And then you have things like your adaptive immunity, which is going to be like your blood cell, your white blood cells and stuff like that. So one of the ones that we want to specifically, after we talk about not killing all the good bacteria in your skin, is to increase the health of your gut. This is, 70% of your immune system lives in your gut. And unfortunately, the most people's way of life, their standard American diet, standard American lifestyle, ultimately is just killing the health of their gut. Every time you eat sugar, processed foods, anytime you're consuming grain or dairy, things like that, they're really hard on your system. And then over time, if you've ever had things like an antibiotic, it literally strips away all of the bacteria in your gut, leaving a very susceptible, opportunistic place where bad bacteria can grow. And all of a sudden now you're having, imbalance in your microbiome, you have SIBO or whatever, or you have leaky gut, which is like probably one of the most common issues. And I guarantee you, if we did a bunch of gut testing, I would say, and I'm not even kidding you when I say this, there's probably 80% of people probably have leaky gut. And I know that because as far as lifestyle stuff goes, I have probably one of the best lifestyles. I mean, we work really hard, but even I had really bad leaky gut, and I didn't necessarily grow up living this healthy lifestyle. And I've absolutely had rounds of antibiotics when I was younger. And, I had definitely a standard American diet and lots of gluten, lots of grain, lots of dairy. And it was pretty eye-opening to see how bad some of the gut stuff was when I did all of my testing. And you can talk to me about maybe doing testing. Probably about 20% of you out there really probably need to do some advanced level testing. The other like 70, 80%, you really just need to start eating. You need to start following the nutrition protocols. You need to start increasing like the healthy gut foods, and you need to start doing some of these specific protocols, and then you'll be pretty good. But there's absolutely 20, 30% of you that probably need to do some of the advanced testing, and just ask about it in the office and we'll get you set up. You guys hate to hear this, but sugar in the immune system. Sugar is one of the like main anti-nutrients. It's pretty insane to think about, but like, what is the statistic here? The average person consumes 152 pounds of sugar, 133 pounds of flour, which turns to sugar every single year. And that was according to Dr. Mark Hyman. That's pretty interesting. In fact, when you consume sugar, even like one serving of sugar minimizes or weakens your immune system up for like 4 or 5 hours. It's really crazy too, because when I think about when I was young, when I was sick, I remember my mom would give me like Sprite, or you'd get if your throat hurt or whatever, you'd get like a shake, like an ice cream shake or something, like all sugar. Like, it's just crazy to think that was actually weakening the immune system, and it was dragging out or making my symptoms worse. So you got to be really careful. When you consume sugar, you're weakening your immune system. And that's just something you really can't afford in this day and age with the coronavirus ramping up, especially how apparently contagious it is. Like, when you're consuming sugar, you're weakening your immune system, and you're leaving yourself significantly more susceptible to not just getting the virus, but getting sick and possibly getting severely sick from, external virus, whether it's the flu or the stomach bug that's going around or something like the coronavirus. And so you can't afford to really do this, because you're really setting yourself up for failure, especially going into the fall. You got to be really careful, because also, so it's fall season. What's the biggest holiday coming around the corner? Halloween. All sugar. You're feeding your kids all this sugar. No wonder they're going to get sick. No wonder they get all these like fall flus and stuff like that. You got to be real careful of doing that. In fact, in our house, we do the switch. I don't know if you've ever heard of that, but basically, Kensley goes trick-or-treating. Yes, we let her go trick-or-treating. And she gets all this candy, but she gets to turn it in. And overnight, the switch takes the candy and gets her toys. And so it's just one of those things that we do to still have fun. But again, we're eliminating the amount of sugar that she gets to have. So, because I don't want her immune system to get weak, and I don't want her to get sick. Evidence suggests that obesity impairs the immunity. And obviously, like, the more overweight you are, the more metabolic function issues you have. Not to mention, what led to overweight is inflammatory foods and sugar, which are depleting your immune system. So again, it's just the lifestyle choices that weaken the immune system. So again, we're talking about like these 2.6 comorbidities that were on average with every single corona fatality. We need to not mandate masks. We need to mandate that bad foods and high sugar foods are eliminated. Like, that makes more sense to me, that we mandate health versus trying to mandate masks. So building up the defense. So let's get to it. What do we need to do? Well, you need to understand the truth about fats. Bad fats ruin your immune system. They're inflammatory, which decrease your immune system, but healthy fats decrease the immune system. High quality proteins are critical for immune function. So some of the top things that you have to do is really understand where you're getting your food from. You've heard that saying, you are what you eat, but ultimately you are what your food ate. And so you look at some of the places where these foods are produced, whether it's, you can see these like chicken farms where they grow so fast because they're genetically modified, and the foods that they're fed, I mean, literally, like they're so big that they can't walk. I mean, they try to walk and their legs break. If you want to watch some really in-depth stuff about that, watch the movie Food Inc. And then you can see on over here with the farm-raised fish. I mean, these fish they're just sick animals. I mean, they're just sick animals, and you're consuming all these sick animals. Like when you look at like grass-fed beef versus corn grain-fed commercial beef, and they're fed with all these steroids, hormones, antibiotics. I mean, there's like they stand in these pens where there's no grass. It's all mud and, crap up to their friggin' ears. And they wouldn't survive if they weren't, just pumped full of steroids and hormones and antibiotics because they're so sick until they, are fattened to go to slaughter. And then you're eating those. It's just when you're eating sick animals, you're going to get sick. So MaxLiving really promotes two different nutrition plans. The first plan is called the core plan. And ideally, this is just a whole food nutrition. This is like whole food for the whole family. I got to hit on this. This is crazy to me. Talking about philosophy and mind paradigms. I saw this meme that said that junk food or unhealthy food is so common that when someone starts to eat healthy, it's automatically a diet. Isn't that crazy? Like when someone chooses to eat healthy, like they're the outsider, like they're the uncommon one. They're the one who's like, oh, you're on a diet. Like it's crazy to think about. So we don't call this a diet. This is just the core plan. This is the MaxLiving core plan. This is what good, healthy nutrition should be. We should eat lots of healthy fats. If we are going to consume dairy, full fat dairy, and it should be organic, raw, preferably, if you are going to do it. Naturally raised animal proteins, whole grains or ancient grains would be ultimately the best because ancient grains, so current modified grains, have such a higher gluten load. I mean, if you want to do some interesting research, look at the evolution of grain in the United States over the last 100 years, the modifications. It's just so different from it used to be. And there has really been no studies done on the impacts of our health when we're consuming these modified grains. So if you are going to do grains, we should look for ancient grains. Okay. So like if we were going to do bread at our house, we do Ezekiel bread. Okay. So a variety of fruits and vegetables, the more fruits and vegetables that you can eat, especially variety, the better it is. Plant-based carbohydrates. So obviously carbs are important, but don't think of carbs like, processed grains and spaghettis and breads. And we want plant-based carbohydrates. Now the advanced plan, this is the nutrition protocol that you need to follow if you have inflammatory disease, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, diabetes, blood sugar instabilities, if you have autoimmune disease, if you have weight gain issues or your obesity or overweight or your weight loss resistant, if you have cancer, heart disease, this is a healing diet. It's a little bit more aggressive, and it's not something that you need to do forever, but you need to do it to allow the body to heal and to reset. You have to eliminate the interference and get back to eating real food to give your body a chance to heal. So it's the same as the core plan as far as the main concepts, but you're eliminating all grains, not just eliminating gluten, but you're eliminating all grains. You can do dairy as long as you don't have a dairy intolerance, which I'm just going to say probably 80% of people do, whether you have a symptom or not. Like I didn't have any symptoms when I consumed dairy, but when I did my testing, I was like off the chart sensitive to dairy. And then only consuming fruits and well, it says berries, but low on the glycemic index. So you can do berries, Granny Smith apples, grapefruit. Those things are low on the glycemic index. Okay. And then this one, your macronutrient breakdown is going to be a little bit more healthy fat. So it's a very anti-inflammatory nutrition protocol. So a little bit higher healthy fats, moderate proteins, and then obviously your carbohydrates are going to be only from like low glycemic fruits and lots of vegetables. Okay, so you are getting carbohydrates. It's not an anti-carbohydrate, but you're getting healthy carbohydrates. Very important. In fact, it's really dangerous if let me go back. if someone is doing a low carbohydrate diet because they heard like carbohydrates are what actually cause people to gain weight, which they do, anything in terms of sugar, that's what causes you to be fat. Fat doesn't make you fat. Your body's inability to burn fat is what makes you fat. Meaning if you're a sugar burning metabolism because you're consuming sugar, that's really that's the underlying cause of weight gain, inflammation, you name it. Okay. And then bad oils or bad fats will cause inflammation, same thing. But if you're going to do a low carbohydrate diet, you have to increase your healthy fats. Otherwise, you're going to wreck your metabolism and you're going to ruin your hormones. And there's going to be all sorts of really devastating events. Not to mention, you're going to have this massive rebound because ultimately what we want is we want to shift our metabolism to utilize fat for fuel, not just constantly being in the sugar burning mode. So that's really important. That's another reason why like keto is kind of popular because it's a higher fat. But you got to be careful. Like you can do bad keto. Like I did a webinar not too long ago, which you can go back on the closed Facebook group and look at. But it is all about how to correctly do like keto or more. I would recommend more of the advanced plan. It's just a healthier plan, but you got to make sure you're doing that stuff correctly. Okay. Immune boosting nutrients. So let's talk about it. Let's get right to how do we get our immune system strong. Number one, probably one of my favorites, absolutely, is vitamin D3. It's critical. Hold on, I gotta pull up my notes. Vitamin D, and ultimately, like vitamin D, you guys probably know this. It comes from the sun. Like our body, our skin metabolizes the sun and turns it into vitamin D. But unfortunately, most of us don't spend enough quality time in the sun, especially because so many people have this huge fear of the sun causing like skin cancer. And so there's not enough time in the sun. Not to mention, if you live in North America, there's just not enough summer months where you're actually able to get out there. And even during the summer, I mean, how many times do you find yourself out in the sun with like 60% of your skin showing for 10 minutes every 15 minutes for every single day? Most people don't do that. Most times they go out to the lake and they spend 8 hours in the sun once or twice a week, and then the rest of the time they're getting a lot of sun and getting damaged, and then they're getting no sun. So ultimately, what you want to do is you want to do 10, 15 minutes every single day with 60% of your skin showing. That's the best way to get vitamin D. Okay. Now, obviously, like there's some really good nutritional ways to get vitamin D, but vitamin D is critical. I mean, they used to think vitamin D is just straight up like a vitamin, but now they're starting to really understand that it's actually acts more like a hormone, and it is critical for immune function. Like every single immune cell needs a D3 molecule to activate it. But what they found is about 42%, and I've seen even other studies up to like 90% of Americans are deficient in vitamin D. Low amounts can increase the risk of developing many immune-related problems, including respiratory infections, aka things like the flu and COVID-19. So this has been, I don't know if you, not just in mainstream media, but in all the stuff that I watched, vitamin D has been one of the most talked about nutrients in this whole COVID epidemic. There are so many research articles that show that if you have low vitamin D levels, you are significantly more likely to get injured by COVID-19. And so research showed that when someone had less than 50 nanograms of vitamin D3 in their system, that they saw a 47% increase in positivity and severity of symptoms. So in the scale, if you like type in vitamin D chart and you look at this chart, the marker is 30. Like that's like if you're below 30 in the medical world, you're low. Like 47 or under are even below 10. And I mean, I've seen people who get tested and they're like at 8. It's crazy. There's walking disease when that happens. But the idea is instead of just being over 30, which would be like a medical, like, oh, you're doing okay, you're over 30. Ideally, I would say you need to be 60 to 100. You really need to be a lot higher than that, 60 to 100. So that's where you need to get your vitamin D levels to. So vitamin D comes from the sun. It's an essential nutrient. But some of the best ways you can get vitamin D are through some of these different foods, cold water fish, salmon, eggs. But ultimately, I mean, we take supplements. We take D3 supplements. %80 of patients with COVID had low vitamin D levels. That says it enough right there. Vitamin C. Vitamin C is an antioxidant. It is known to help encourage the body to produce white blood cells and fight infection. Vitamin C has shown promising results in both reducing the duration and severity of illness. So kind of a cool study. One study found that supplementation of high dose vitamin C helped to reduce the duration of an illness by almost 20%. 20%, that's crazy. So if you're taking a good amount of vitamin C, you're minimizing how long you might be sick, and you're clearly minimizing the severity of the actual symptom. Vitamin C also is known as an antiviral and an anti-inflammatory. In fact, if you take high enough levels of vitamin C, it's actually known to be an antiviral drug. That's why intravenous vitamin C therapy is becoming so popular, because at high levels like that, it's actually known and stated to be, or classified to be, an antiviral drug. It also helps to downregulate the cytokine storm, which is the inflammatory storm that was really evidence of why the coronavirus and the COVID-19 damages the system so bad, is because it causes the cytokine storm, which is this systemic inflammatory response. And so vitamin C, is known to help downregulate, as an anti-inflammatory, downregulate that cytokine storm. It is also critical for cellular repair. And so vitamin C helps the body repair those cells that have been damaged, especially through things like coughing and stuff like that. So works as compounding the, and then there's something, quercetin works at compounding the effects of vitamin C and helps to repair the, helps transport some other very specific minerals through the barrier to help with, I'm going to talk about that here in a second, but ultimately vitamin C is known to boost the immune system, and you can get it from things like cherries, oranges, strawberries, tomatoes, really good foods out there that have high levels of vitamin C. Zinc, this has been all over the news if you've been watching at all when it comes to healthy things versus just, drug stuff. But zinc is found in every cell in the entire body. It's necessary for function of over 300 enzymatic metabolic processes. Enzymes that speed up chemical reactions in the body and respond for several functions, including metabolic function, digestion, and nerve function, and other processes. Zinc is also a key component in immune health and function, cell growth, DNA synthesis, protein production, and it helps the body fight off oxidative stress. I mean, it says right there, I mean, it's important for almost every cellular function that there is. Zinc fights off viral infection, so it's actually important for it's an antiviral, and it helps to fight off viral infection. And I thought this was probably the coolest part, and one of the reasons why zinc has been such a highly promoted mineral here with the COVID stuff is because it actually is known to assist in the stopping of viral cell replication. So it actually is stopping the virus from replicating. So if you consume zinc, so studies show that if within the first 10 days of an infection, if you can get really good levels of vitamin Z, your survival rate is much, much better. And it's actually showed that when people have lower levels of zinc, that they're 2 times greater to have a hospitalization or dying from COVID. Proper quality zinc has been shown to reduce the duration of sicknesses by 33%. Gosh, that's awesome. That's awesome. So consuming high zinc foods such as seeds, grass-fed meats, beans, you name it. Okay. One of the biggest things that they've seen here recently with nutrient deficiencies is that soil depletion has affected zinc one of the most. Elderberry and Echinacea, these are critical, and these have been used for, thousands of years. I mean, this is not new by any means, the elderberry and the echinacea. Elderberries have recently been gaining popularity, though, for several good reasons. However, elderberries have been around for a long time. They actually have been used throughout history to treat infections. Elderberries are a powerhouse of nutrients, making them critical for the immune system and its function. One study found that patients who used elderberry syrup found relief from flu symptoms 4 days faster than the placebo. Gosh, that's awesome. That's huge. Echinacea is a group of plants in the daisy family. Echinacea has been commonly used for a variety of purposes, with one being to boost the immune system. One review found that supplementing with echinacea can help decrease the risk of getting sick by over 50% and reducing the length of sickness by a day and a half. Man, that's good stuff right there. So Echinacea, elderberry. These are some of the things that we do a lot in our house. So here, I'll kind of break it down. I made it like super, super simple. So we have these specific MaxLiving Perspectives, and I put these together for you in a couple different layers though. This is just your straight up your immune boosting. This is the kind of stuff we want to take preventatively. So these are the things that we are taking in our family getting into the flu season. Okay. But it's also something I started taking specifically when all this COVID stuff started ramping up, because I wanted my immune system to be as strong as possible if it were to come in contact with the virus or whatever. I mean, guys, I'm around sick people all the time. Like, because I tell you, if you were sick, you got to get in and get adjusted. So I'm exposed to a lot of people that are sick all the time. So I focus on creating a strong immune system so I can take care of you guys, because I can take care of my patients. So specifically with this, in the immune booster, the preventative is going to have your vitamin D3. One of the reasons I like our vitamin D specifically is because each pill is 5,000 IUs, which is a really good amount to maintain a good level of vitamin D in your blood. That's going to help you stay up at that 50, that 60 marker like I was talking about. Now, if you're lower and you know you're lower, then you might need to take 10 or 20 to build up that level so we can get to like a maintenance dose. But one of the reasons I love ours the most, not only because it's a 5,000 IU, once a day pill, but it also has 10 billion CFUs of probiotics, which make it highly, highly absorbable. So not only is it a really good whole food formulation of D3, which makes it very, very bioavailable, but it has 10 billion CFUs of probiotics, which makes it highly absorbable. So I'm actually using the vitamin D3 that I'm taking. All right. Zinc plus. One of the reasons, so obviously we talked a lot about zinc, right? It's that antiviral. It stops viral replication. It's critical for so many different metabolic functions. Low levels of zinc lead you for a higher risk of getting damaged and getting very, very sick from things like COVID or the flu. One of the reasons that I'm a huge fan of our specific zinc, though, is because it has some things in it that are going to help with activation. Let me find where my zinc at. So specifically, it has vitamin B6 in it. So that's going to help with activation. So you're actually like putting like a booster on the zinc, but also has, and I'm not at molybdenum. Molybdenum. I'm not sure exactly how we say that, but I did some research on it, and it's one of the things that helped it get into the cell. It acts as a transporter. Tyrene, malic acid. So there's some very specific stuff in here that's going to help not only activate the zinc, but it's going to help get it into the cell. So that way it's actually being utilized. Vitamin C, again, it's an antiviral, anti-inflammatory. It's one of the best ones known to minimize the negative effects of the flu. So it's going to act as an antioxidant as well. And then the IM support. The IM support, this is where I get my echinacea. This is where I get my elderberry. There's a couple other things in here, again, help for activation. But that IM support is one of those that I'm consistently taking to keep my immune system strong. So this is the bundle that you really, really need to be on to make sure you're getting your immune system to a point where it can interact with the external environment. Now, what happens to you if you're exposed, though? So if you are exposed, then you know you need to up your game, especially if you don't want to get sick or if you want to minimize the symptoms, minimize the length of that flu or cold. So it has everything in the preventative bundle, obviously, but it also, you're going to add in your vitamin A. Instead of the vitamin C pills, it's a vitamin C powder. You can take a little bit more. It's a little bit easier. It has your pro NAC. This is something that I put a PubMed study in the closed Facebook group, but this N-acetylcysteine was known, even in PubMed journals, to minimize hospitalizations and death rates due to COVID. So this is something that is really critical for you to be taking if you feel like you have been exposed, specifically to things like not just the flu, but even to COVID. And so So let me back up here. The preventative stuff you're taking at a preventative level. So you're taking one vitamin D, you're taking you're taking one vitamin D capsule, you're taking one zinc capsule, you're taking just your normal 2 capsules of the vitamin C, and you're taking 4 of the IM. So this is what it says on the label. Okay, this is just your preventative stuff. Now, if you've been exposed, we're going to kick this into high gear. So if we've been exposed, we're going to try and take 15,000 IUs of vitamin D3. So you're taking 3 pills. The vitamin A, you're doing 5 drops a day with a meal. The Pro NAC, you're doing 2. The zinc, you're still with that 1. Vitamin C powder, you're doing 1 teaspoon. The iron support, you're still doing your 4. And the other big one, and this is the curcumin, and this is the anti-inflammatory. This is the one that is going to really help minimize the cytokine storm, the inflammatory responses, all the body aches, all that sort of stuff. So curcumin is going to be a really powerful anti-inflammatory. It also help with, not that we want to lower a fever, but it's a healthy version of a Tylenol. Okay. So this is what you want to take if you've been exposed. Now, what do you do if you actually got it? Like you're like, boom, you are like in the midst of it. You're down and you're out. What do we need to do? Well, it's kind of this similar bundle as the exposure one. You're just doing therapeutic dosages. So you're going to do upwards of even 9 pills of the vitamin D3 because you've got to just crank that immune system into overdrive. 15 drops of the vitamin A. You're doing 5 of the N-acetylcysteine, so the Pro NAC. You're doing, again, 1 with the zinc. You're doing 2 teaspoons of this vitamin C powder. You're doing 4 of the IM support, and you're doing 2 of the curcumin. So it's the same. You're really hitting it a lot harder. This is going to really help save you from getting just sicker and sicker and sicker. It's going to keep you from feeling like crap, and it's going to minimize the length of that sickness. Okay, guys, I'm going to go through this next part pretty quick. I would really, really recommend if you can go back in the closed group and watch the actual webinar that Dr. Jill and I did about minimizing and avoiding toxins. But 70% to up to 90% of disease risk likely stem from environmental factors. So you got to identify where these toxins are coming from. So I talked about these like anti-bacterial wipes and antibacterial hand sanitizers, all this sort of stuff. Super, super dangerous, guys. There's been lots of research out there that shows just washing your hands with regular soap and water is just as effective as doing the antibacterial stuff, but it doesn't strip your body of the natural defenses. Now, there's all sorts of other hygiene products. And again, I'm really going to highly recommend that you go back and you rewatch that because there's so many hygiene products. You think about all the things you put in your skin that are, to be honest, if you're not really focused on getting really healthy organic versions of it, they're just super, super toxic. So look at all the food additives. You talk about who you trust. You think about the FDA and all the things that they allow in foods that are known carcinogens. Sodium nitrates are illegal in most other countries. In fact, the American Cancer Society says that they are unfit for human consumption. Aspartame is a known carcinogen, red dye number 5. This hormone that you see in like some different meats and cheeses it's highly linked to hormonal cancers. BHT, refined oils, sodium benzoate. These, if you see these on ingredients, you cannot. They are not food. They are not compatible with health. Reducing your toxic exposure. So you just choose healthier organic foods, grass-fed meats, cold water, wild-caught fish, consume raw organic dairy, avoid processed foods. So reading those food labels, and if you see it, that sodium benzoate, those nitrates, you don't consume them. They're so bad for you. Now, if you're at a restaurant, this is what's really scary, or if you go to fast food, is that you don't even know what's in it. There's no label, but just know they're not doing high-quality foods there, okay? Use clean household products. Like if you are not buying like healthy, clean products, like so we buy from Max Mamas because one of their pillars, their foundation is that they have healthy, clean products. And so that's where we get everything from what we put on our skin, our toothpaste, our lotions, our soaps, to what we wash our clothes in, our cleaning products around the house. You name it. Eliminate plastics. We don't use plastics at all. Really no water bottles. Filter air. So we have air filterizations at our house and in the office using the air doctor. and then avoid smoking and excess of drinking. I mean, all those things are just causing super toxins. And really aid the detoxification process. Your body is designed to detox. You have some amazing detoxification organs, but you got to support those. And one of the main ways that I support ours is the detox system. Now, this is not part of the bundle, but I consume this on a regular basis, specifically quarterly, or I'll do a purification like I just did the Max Purification Cleanse, because we're just constantly exposed to those toxins that you can't necessarily avoid. So we got to detox on a regular basis. And so this is one of my favorite detoxification protocols. I do this probably quarterly. It's just a month's supply. And it works on two levels. It works as a cell detox as well as a body detox. So it pulls toxins out of the cellular level. So it's a true cellular detox. And then it helps to safely remove them out the system. So another really good way to do like detox and building your immunity is to do things like apple cider vinegar drinks, things that support gut function, like eating fermented food. I also do a lot of gut work after I did all those tests and I had some leaky gut issues. So I'll do like the GI Renew. This is really good for helping to seal and heal gut lining to minimize toxic exposures leaking into the gut. So I do a lot of lemon drinks, apple cider vinegar lemon drinks to help with detoxification processes and building immunity. Exercise and sweating is one of the best ways to detox and boost the immune system. It reduced illnesses by 40%. There's so many studies that talk about being inactive and having a sedentary lifestyle increase disease processes. So ultimately, you put all this stuff together. It's critical implementing all of the essentials. And ultimately, it's all of them. And which essential do you need to work on the most right now? It's whichever one you're neglecting. But it comes down to also understanding the true fundamental idea of what is health, and all those supplements and all those things are really important. But remember, it's the power that made the body that heals the body, and health comes from function. That life and all those things support health, but health ultimately, it just comes from the body's innate potential to heal and function. And we know all that power comes from the brain. And we talk about this specifically in the office, even with new patients, because that life energy flows down the spinal cord and across the nerves to every cell, tissue, organ in the entire body. But if there is a misalignment that blocks that life energy, think about a dimmer switch. If it dims that life energy, you get weakened function. And with weakened function, you're more likely to get dysfunction and disease processes. So if you have pressure on the nerve going to your colon, I don't care how much supplements you take, your colon's still not going to function properly, and you're going to build disease. Just like if there's weakness going to your heart or to your lungs. One of the best things that we talk about to our patients, if you do feel like you're getting sick or if you need an extra adjustment, is when you're getting wore down, because research shows that when you get adjusted, it boosts your immune system up to 48%. Every time you get adjusted. But the real cool thing is if you've consistently been getting adjusted, so if you're in wellness care for 5 years or more, that you have a 200% greater immune competence than those who have not been receiving chiropractic care. So just wellness chiropractic care is probably one of the best things you can do. I mean, there's not a supplement that boosts your immune system 200%. There's nothing that does that. So get adjusted to make sure your body's ability to fight off the flu season, or if you've been exposed to coronavirus or whatever, make sure your body is just super strong and ready to interact with that stuff. So action steps, maybe get an extra adjustment or two, get on that immune boost bundle. So like the preventative one, and we'll have signs up, and there are major discounts in the office. If you come into the office, just make sure you mention, hey, I saw this talk. I want the immune bundle, the initial bundle that we talked about. Make sure you get that specifically. I would easily have the recovery bundle, which is the same as with the exposure bundle, in your medicine cabinet in case you get exposed, to do that other stuff and the high level recovery, because you're going to get exposed. It's a matter of when. But get those bundles. Make sure you're preparing your immune system and getting it strong. I think they are like 25 or 30% off in the office, and you have to mention that you saw this talk. And then that way you'll get the major discount on that bundle. If you want some of the other stuff, so like the Gut Renew, another good one that I didn't mention, but we do a lot, and specifically in our family, is this colloidal silver spray. I like this. It's really good. It works as a great antibacterial. So I love that. So we don't do antibiotics. We typically will do stuff like colloidal silver stuff. So pick up those bundles, prepare yourself, strengthen your immune system, get extra adjusted, and just continue to learn how to take care of you and your family. If you have any other questions, guys, make sure you ask. I'm going to consistently put out some more information to help you guys just live a maximized life. All right. Hope you learned a lot. We'll talk to you later. Bye.